Swing big and save even bigger with our Big League Markdowns at Capital Ford in Santa Fe. This is your shot at big league deals, like a new 2025 Ford F-150 XLT 4-wheel drive Power Boost Hybrid, now up to $9,900 off MSRP, or a new 2026 Ford F-250 Super Duty, now up to $6,100 off MSRP. We're offering up home run deals all day, every day, with these Big League Markdowns at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, what's going on, Lobo Nation? We welcome you to another episode of the Pit Press Live. I am Nick Nunez, joined by Ed Nunez and Rick Thompson of the Cherry Heat Check podcast. We thank you for joining us once again on the Pit Press Live. We want to chat about the new contract details for UNM men's basketball coach Eric Olen. They were announced yesterday. Coach Olen and athletic director Ryan Berriman addressed the media today. We'll chat about that. We'll chat a little bit about roster building for UNM. We're glad to have Rick Thompson on, who's been doing a great job covering UNM's transfer portal activity. We'll get his thoughts on how this roster has come together. There's 10 players on it. Coach Olen has 5 roster spots left. We'll chat about that. We're missing the founder and owner of the Pit Press, Eric Moulton. He's on vacation with his family, so we wish Eric well. But guys, let's talk about the big news. Again, Eric Olen, it was announced that he's got a new contract with UNM. The details are the term first, 2026 through 2031. He was previously under contract from 2025 to 2030. Kind of the big key points, if you will. 2 $100,000 retention bonuses coming Coach Olen's way as part of the new agreement. One of them is a $100K bonus, retention bonus that he'll get this May. He will get the second $100,000 retention bonus in May of 2027. Coach Olen's salary increases, the media participation cooperation portion of his salary and the program promotion portion of his salary increase. And the buyout provisions go up exponentially. His buyout in 2026, 2027 under the previous contract would have been $2 million, $2,025,000, and his new buyout is $2,950,000. So over a $900,000 increase in the buyout. So guys, want to get your thoughts on the new contract. Dad, we'll start with you first since you were at the press conference. After the deal, what was announced? What were your big takeaways?
I think the incentives that are in there for him to stay. He talked about that. He got some more money, but I thought the incentives to encourage him to stay around were important as well. I think there was a lot of concern from some Lobo fans. His name had been mentioned with some other Power 5 jobs. Arizona State a couple of months ago, they went in another direction, but his name had been mentioned, by some other schools, not recently, but near the end of the season, that he was rumored to be maybe up for some other jobs. So I thought Ryan Berriman locking him up and giving him an extension with those incentives tied in to maybe stick around gives the program continuity and stability. And Coach Olen and Berriman both mentioned that at the press conference today. So you remember we were left at the altar by Bronco Mendenhall, by Fernando Lobo. He left after 6 months. So I think Coach Eck has signed an extension. So I think there's some nervousness sometimes when Lobo coaches do well they're always wondering how long they're going to stay. So I think this gives Lobo Nation a little bit of room to, exhale a little bit and say, hey, he'll be around at least for a while, we hope. And I was pretty happy with what they said today at the press conference.
Rick, I think you recorded your podcast yesterday or the day before the news broke. Now that you've seen the contract details and heard from at least Coach Olen today, what were your thoughts?
Well, I don't think it would have mattered much to me, Nick, because I don't really have much, I think, thought on this as like a good or, pushing the needle forward. I think, when you compare other mid-major schools in a similar position, like Coach Olen mentioned today, the mid-majors that are really trying to make a splash, maybe 10 to 15 of those, the amount of this contract, I don't think even puts him as the highest paid coach in the Mountain West. I believe Bryce Drew will still be sitting at the top, even though I don't know if that's public information. I think he was making around 1.7 plus last year. So, they're saying the right things. I applaud Ryan Berryman for taking this action early, locking him in. I think Boston College was also sniffing around in the offseason as a team that was interested in Coach Olen. So I think it's good for the school, good for Berryman and Olen to build on what they had last year. But as far as the monetary values of this contract, I don't think it means anything at all except a good job on your first season. Here's some more money for you. Here's some more for your coaches. And Nick, you've been on fire on Twitter the past couple of weeks, and you put something out to the effect that even though this amount of the buyout went up, that's really nothing for these P4 schools. And you use the example of Jared Calhoun just being bought out at Utah State by Cincinnati, which was $4 million, even greater than this amount in Olen's new contract. So I think it's good for the school, obviously all parties involved, but long term, I don't think it really changes the perception of that a New Mexico coach could get plucked by a bigger school once they have success.
100% agree with that take, Rick. Just kind of dovetailing on what you last said. I mean, I think it's good for both Coach Olen, the university, and Lobo fans to see these two sides working together, coming to an agreement to extend him. It does give him a little bit more money. And it also shows some good faith from the university that they want to keep him here, an acknowledgement of what he accomplished this season. 26 wins for Eric Olen was the second most by a first-year head coach behind Craig Neal, Noodles, your favorite Lobo head coach, Dad. He had 27 wins, I believe, in 2013, 2014. So Coach Olen accomplished a lot this season. I'm glad the two sides worked out a good deal. I wanted to chat about some things that were discussed in the press conference today. I think they're worth discussing. The first one was a question. Oh, Rick, you had something. Go ahead.
I have, before we get off like the numbers part of the contract and move to something else. Yeah, I want to know with this new amount that Coach Olen is being paid. I know we'll never know until Nick Nunez and company make some way on their case. Who do you think will be making more this season, Coach Olen or Jake Hall?
That's a good question. Rick, I wish I could comment. I mean, I would safely say probably Coach Olen, if I had to guess, and this is just me speaking as a fan with no knowledge of anything, because I don't have knowledge of anything. If I had to guess, it would be Eric Olen making more than Jake Hall. Jake Hall, we'd heard the numbers that were being thrown out at him from these Power 4 blue blood schools. What was it, Rick, Dad? It was probably like around $2 million, which were some of the suitors. I think given what's been reported, at least by Jeff Grammer in his articles, he said that UNM has around $3 million to spend in revenue sharing for a roster, plus any third-party NIL deals the athletes can secure with the assistance of the university or on their own through their agent. So $3 million amongst a roster of 15, you got to do the math. Coach Olen today did talk about how big men are at a premium in this market. We've seen a lot of people come out and write about that. Evan Mia came out and wrote about that. So Rick, if you held me to it, man, I think Coach Olen is making more than Jake Hall. I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Hall's in the 7-figure range, though. I will say that. Dad, what do you think, man? What do you think? Who's making the most between Eric Olen and Jake Hall, if you had to guess?
You know what? That we're even asking that kind of tells you what the landscape is now. That it's a possibility that could be happening. Yeah, Donovan Dent made more than Cronin, right? $3 million, or did he? JT Toppin, did he make more? He made $4 million. So I'm going to go with you, son, and say that Jake Hall or Coach Olen is still making more than Jake Hall, but they had to up Hall's NIL, and he's definitely, as you mentioned, in the seven figures. But that question kind of rocked me a little bit because you're just thinking, well, Olen's signing that contract today. He's definitely making the most of anybody on the UNM team, but there's certainly a chance that Jake Hall is making more. But I'll say that Coach Olen is still the highest paid, person on that roster.
Let's get to the comments. This is Steve Singletary 2126. What I think is overlooked is how they are investing in the assistant coaches now. When you look back at the Rocky era, he had a hard time keeping assistant coaches. Ryan should be commended. And Rick, you and I were talking about this before we got on. Coach Olen was given $175,000 in additional compensation to retain his staff. We talked about the coaches that are on his staff: Tom Tankowitz, Sam Stapleton, Mikey Wilder, Mike Roberts, and Mikey Howells. A lot of Mikes there. Rick, we were talking about what they made coming into this season. They were on one-year deals. Tom Tankowitz is the highest paid assistant on UNM men's basketball's coaching staff's payroll. Other than Eric Olen, he makes $200,000, or he made $200,000 in his contract last year. Then you got Mike Roberts at $150,000. I believe Mikey Wilder is at $150,000, and Sam Stapleton's at $150,000, and Mikey Howell is at about $75,000. So those were the five assistant coaches that I looked at to get $175,000 more. Dad, your thoughts, man? Is it important for Coach Olen to be able to retain his coaching staff for next year?
They all got bumps too, and I think a job well done to Coach Olen in his first year. He won 26 games, but I think the staff has to feel good, like they're valued as well, and the whole staff did a very good job. So I think they must feel pretty good that they were acknowledged. And as the commentator Steve said, that it's important to retain your assistant coaches and make them feel like they contributed. And sometimes you can tell them, hey, you did a great job, or you can give them money always talks, man. So I'm glad they got that bump. They deserved it as well. They did.
Rick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this staff. I think when you look across, they do a good job recruiting. They have the connections in Europe, able to talk to players there. But I really liked Coach Mike Roberts this year. He's very intense, getting in guys' face, really getting them pumped up. And you could see how the players really bought into these coaches, fed off of them at times. And it's really a group effort. And Coach Olen has mentioned that it's not just him, it takes the rest of these guys. So they deserve a reward. They came into a very difficult situation with a little time to put that team together, and look how successful they were. I think they did a job well done and well-earned money here.
Yeah. Some other things that were discussed at the press conference today. I thought this was a good question by Jeff Grammer to Ryan Berriman. He asked him, investment is great. It shows an investment through the university for Coach Olen and the coaching staff that was retained. But Jeff Grammer asked Ryan Berriman, where is the money coming from? And let's hear that Q&A with Jeff Grammer and Ryan Berriman.
For sure.
So the decision to invest is one thing. Where is the money coming from?
Yeah, I think, when I look at it holistically, we've had a successful year in a lot of financial categories. And, there are benefits that come with that in terms of exceeding budget marks and so forth. The second piece of that is that, we've seen a surgence in interest and support as a result of the success, right? And so maybe partners that, are willing to increase their investment, or private philanthropy that's stepped up as a result of the momentum that we have. And then candidly, we've been very conservative and smart with our budgeting over the last few years, and we have good fiscal health to be able to make investments sometimes. And this is one of these.
Dad, your thoughts? I mean, Ryan's talking about kind of where the money comes from. I think what I took from that, UNM's going to rely on donors probably heavily to make up things like this, because their athletics budget, which I pulled up, this is from fiscal year 2024. I don't think the one from fiscal year 2025 will be available until the fall, if I had to guess. But This is public information on UNM's website. You can find it at NCAA compliance report. Just type that in for UNM and this will pop up. These are the sources of revenue that make up part of UNM's athletic budget. You see in fiscal year 2024, ticket revenue, $5,486,397. Some other familiar sources to people will be the media rights deals. This was under the old deal, $3,401,866. They get $2 million, almost $2.5 million from the NCAA in distribution. So this is what an athletics budget looks like. But see, you've got a contributions category that kind of talks a little bit about the donations that people may give. And I think that's what it's going to take, Dad and Rick, both you guys, anyone who wants to chime in on this point. I mean, UNM just extended EC to kind of a similar deal, right? I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but it shows good faith on the university. What did you think, Dad, about Ryan's comments about how UNM is going to pay for this?
He said, candidly speaking, that the money's going to come from, philanthropy, and mentioned some other things. Now, candidly speaking, it'll also come in the increased ticket prices, increased concessions. That's candid. That's candidly speaking. It's got to come from somewhere, besides those other places. And I think that, and look, we want that's just, Nick, you'd mentioned that a couple of weeks ago about a box of M&Ms, $7, and things they cost money to pay for these things that they want to do. Now, he did mention, and I thought it was important, that they're in good fiscal health, and that says that somebody's minding the budget well. And let's face it, in this kind of NIL deals and things that change daily, someone has to be minding the store very well. But that was my take on it. I thought Ryan did a good job in answering that. And you know what, Jeff? Jeff, I thought that was a great question because people want to know, where that money's coming from. But I think, candidly speaking, the prices, the increases will be passed down to the paying customer in one form or another. You can believe that.
Yeah, Rick, my question to you, man, is this worth the investment for UNM athletics? And the reason I asked that, I mean, we know Coach Olen can coach. No one's saying he can't coach. 26 wins, what he did with a brand new roster, having us competitive, playing postseason basketball. Everyone knows Coach Olen can coach ball. But in terms of his likability and whether he's embraced by Lobo fans, I mean, is winning games enough or do you need more?
Well, if we want to look at the number just in sheer attendance, you need more. You need something more because attendance was down by about 1,000 seats per game, even though they led the Mountain West and were top 30 in the entire country in attendance, which is outstanding. I think the limited access that media members like the two of you, like Jeff Grammer has, when you compare the access that you all had under previous coaches and the ability to tell the stories of all these new players that we know nothing about and really know nothing about throughout the season because we're not getting the same type of stories, coverage, interviews, access maybe to even come on the Pit Press here and chop it up with you guys. So I know he's fulfilling all the obligations of his media part of his contract. But as far as the answers that he gives, someone like you, Nick, when you put together a very thoughtful question about roster construction or your question about how an offense is affecting a defense in detail, and he gives you some type of dry coach speak answer, those are the type of things that kind of rub a fan like me the wrong way, where I'm not just going to cheer for you because you're the coach. I do want to see a little personality. I want to see you doing something in the community like a Coach Eck. And I understand not everyone is Coach Eck. He's one in a million, right? Like he can hop in with a zin in his mouth, fire off a social media video, and it'll be gold. And I love it, right? And I know not everyone has that personality, but you have to find different ways. I think Patino was able to do it in his own sarcastic way, right? Interact with the media while making them feel comfortable at the same time. So I think that part for me is confusing as to why he wouldn't want the stories of these players to be told. I understand wanting to control the narrative and the access, as we saw last year. We still don't know what happened with Patton and, some of these other situations. that's the only thing. And if they're going to be the top dog in the Mountain West and be the leader that he's talking about, then they need to fill the stands. And he's a big part of selling the program at this point in time.
Dad, I want to get your thoughts on the same question, man. You go to Eric Olen's press conferences. I go as often as I can. We see him face to face, right? And we kind of get a read on his demeanor. What are your thoughts, man? All in all, if you had to lean on one side of the fence or the other, are you pro Eric Olen, or do you think he needs to give us a little bit more?
I think he's a great coach. I think what Rick said is absolutely true. But I got to say this is just my opinion. When they brought him here to the press conference and they put the blazer on him and, you saw those people there, he's an introverted guy. And I kind of looked at it like, I think he was a little bit overwhelmed by the attention he got here. One of my friends said that he used to go to the games. He lives in San Diego, and he went to the games in UCSD, and that you could practically walk on the floor. They didn't get the fan support that they did here. So I think sometimes, I don't know if that he's we mentioned an analytical, introverted guy. He, in even today's press conference, sometimes it's kind of you got to lean in to hear him. He's a soft-spoken person. But I think to your point, to Rick's point, Rick, you make a good point there when you say that. We want to root for him, but you want to hear a little bit more. And he's not. Look, that's just the way it's going to be. And we've been to enough press conferences to see that that's pretty much what he does. He's going to give you an answer, a basketball speak answer. He's not going to come out and be real enthusiastic about it. That's just his style. I said that to Coach Eck. I had lunch with him. I told you his son, when Steve already had a lunch, one of my best friends, and Coach Eck was there. And I mentioned that to him. I said, not everybody can do what you do. And that's true. Jason Eck can go out and people stop him, and he's high-fiving with them. Everyone's a Lobo, right? He's doing the whole thing. Him and Eric Olen couldn't be two different people. And we have to appreciate that and understand that. Coach Olen, that doesn't mean Coach Olen isn't very analytical, right? He's always thinking. One of my friends that went to the Lobo alumni, he's a Lobo alumni, Marvin McBurrows. He went to their practice. He said they cover everything. They don't leave anything untouched, man. They cover everything. So I think he's just that kind of person. I'm not knocking him. I'm pro Eric Olen all the way. But what you see is what you get, man. That's just the way it is. And I don't know that we're going to see a more forthcoming. Rick, I agree with you, man. The Lobo fans want to know about these players. Lobo fans, you know how they are, Rick, up here, man. You already know it's a fishbowl up here. And when Lobo basketball signs, people are like, especially now with the media the way it is, they want to know, and they want to know yesterday. Who is it? What is he from? What's he like? Show me some tape. Quick. So that's just the way it is. I still enjoy listening to him, but that's Coach Olen. That's his personality.
Thanks for joining us on the Pit Press Live. I'm Nick Nunez, joined by Ed Nunez and Rick Thompson of the Cherry Heat Check podcast. We're talking Eric Olen's contract extension, guys. There's just one more thing I wanted to point out about the extension. This, Rick, what this was to your point about, access to Coach Olen. Coach Olen's salary, as I mentioned at the beginning, is broken up into three parts. It's got a base salary. Then he's given a certain portion of his salary for media cooperation and participation. And what does that mean, essentially? I think people have a question about that because there's this question about access. So if he's given a portion of his salary to participate with the media, what does that mean? Well, there's contract language, and I'm not going to get too deep into the details, but I'll just pull up the provision of the contract that talks about media participation. That's going to be subsection D, media participation cooperation. Essentially what I was told, UNM's interpretation of this provision, and this is just me summarizing, but that Coach Olen is only obligated to go to these media functions for which the university will receive revenue. So these are partnerships that UNM has. For example, when Coach Eck and Coach Olen go talk on Lobo Talk on Thursdays and do pregame shows with Robert Portnoy on KKOB Radio and some of these pregame and postgame media sessions that Coach Olen has, that's what makes up the bulk of this, what he will make now, $425,000 for next year. That's a third of it. The other third that he receives an extension for is for program promotion. And this speaks for itself. Coach Olen shall actively promote the program. These are those Instagram hype videos. He doesn't really do a lot of those. He puts out a lot of tweets through UNM men's basketball's X page. But Coach Olen essentially gets about $425,000. What else I will say is that these are the sections of salary compensation that UNM chose to increase in Eric Olen's contract. They could have, and I asked this question, and I'm going to pull up the question and answer. I'm not sure why they didn't just increase the base salary, which is the other third of his contract. But I asked Ryan Behrman that at the press conference, and let's pull up his answer.
Level is going to be imperative to our success.
Ryan, looking at the contract breakdown for Coach Olen, the increase in salary, he gets those 2 retention bonuses. And then the biggest increase comes from media participation and cooperation and program promotion. Can you tell us what the thought process was on increasing those portions of Coach Olen's salary versus the base salary? And what does that mean? Does that mean Coach Olen's going to be more available to the media?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance in contracts, but I think to the earlier question about generating new revenue, right? Those are areas that we see growth, particularly in some of our sponsorship categories and our private philanthropy. So yeah, there'll be more expectations there for not only coach, but our student athletes as well. And so those are areas when we look at as an athletic department that we see growth and upside. And so we're betting on ourselves.
So Ryan's answer, what I take from that is that, UNM is working with some of its philanthropy donors to kind of work out deals like this so things like this can happen. That's my takeaway. But I think in answer to the larger question, Rick, that you posed on this subject, it's just, I think the media access is going to be the same. I think Coach Olen is who he is. I think he will open up a little bit. I think he was pretty open today, Dad. Didn't you think at the press conference?
I did. I thought he was. I got to say, though, that there's a part of him that wants to keep things close to the vest, man. There is. Rick mentioned that. We be a little more forthcoming. I think he likes a lot of your basketball questions, son, and people that ask him related strategy questions. I think he likes to answer those. I think the other parts about, the budget and, things that have nothing to do with the basketball operations part of it, I don't think he has a real good time doing that part of his job. So, yeah, I thought he was. I think he's happy that they signed the extension. I think Lobo fans, like I said, that are used to being jilted and, left at the altar. And it only, it happened with Mendenhall and Fernando Lobo. Nothing against Fernando at all. He found a better deal. So did Coach Mendenhall. But people around here do get a little bit nervous when they start hearing their coaches are up for other jobs. And Coach Eck, hey, New Mexico is going to a bowl game, man. They're going to a bowl game. We just don't know which one. They're going to be, very good again. And so that question will be later on down the line. Is he staying? Is he going to stay or go? And that's just the nature of athletics in today's landscape. But yeah, Nick, I thought he was a little bit more forthcoming. But he's a cool, calm, collected guy. We saw him smile one time when they asked him about something. I think Jeff Grammer asked him something today, and he got a little chuckle. And when they asked him about Jake Hall and playing golf, he kind of chuckled. He's not a guy that's going to openly laugh out loud. That's not his thing. He's kind of, I think, a little weary of the media. But I thought he was a little bit more forthcoming today.
To a couple of the comments, Steve Singletary, he needs to open up practice to the media. Information is key to keep the excitement going. I will share a conversation I had with someone with UNM men's basketball. He said that Coach Pitino didn't have as many open practices as people think he did. I think he quoted to me that Coach Pitino maybe had 4 open practices his last year here, 2024, 2025. I think we went to 2, right, Dad? It was at the very beginning of the season. We got to attend a summer workout. But I can count in total the number of practices and open workouts that I went to last year was about 2 or 3. So we'll see what happens with that. Guys, I feel like we've beat the horse dead on the contract extension. We've been going about 30 minutes.
Nick, though, I got to ask you, since you were the one to ask Ryan Berryman in the question, Why do you think they increased that part of the contract and not the base salary? Because I know what you were getting at. So why do you think they did that?
Honestly, Rick, I have no idea. I mean, like, that's why I asked, because I thought they would have done the base salary. I can't think, unless he's going to do more of that, why else would you? Right? Like, I don't know. To me, it makes up the most sense, which is why I asked the question. So I don't have a good answer. Do you, or Dad? Do either one of you have any thoughts on that?
I don't.
It could be because there's more responsibilities, or they're expecting more than what was done, and that's the incentive to do so. But I'll let you continue on with the show. That was an excellent question. I didn't get to hear that part of the presser, so thank you.
No worries, man. No worries. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about UNM men's basketball, the basketball portion of the show. A lot of people have been talking about the roster, but you pretty much exclusively have been the only guy talking about the schedule. I did tune into, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before that, but the locks for UNM for next year's schedule, 2026, 2027, you're at Santa Clara, you're at home against Utah State, and at home against New Mexico State. Am I missing anything else that's been locked in, Rick?
I don't have it up right here, but I think those are the ones that have all been confirmed at this point. The other ones that are being chatted about that aren't confirmed are Boise State and Oregon State. But yeah, the three we know about are just Utah State, Santa Clara, and New Mexico State, which will be in Albuquerque this year. So I guess my question back to either of you is, you were at the presser today and Coach Olen was speaking about how it'll be so hard to fill those opportunities that are left over from the Mountain West schools that are leaving. Do you think the Lobos can even build a schedule that's tournament worthy at this point in time?
Dad, go ahead. You go first.
Good question. I had to think about that one because a lot of teams, remember what Brian Dutcher said, we're not coming here, no mo. Don't want to play in elevation, man. This, what, Rick and Nick, back in the day, this is even like in the 80s, Danny Crum at Louisville said, we're not coming here. We're not coming to play in elevation with an unfriendly place where 18,000 fans and the rest are against us. This goes back years. So I think it's a legitimate question. And Rick, you mentioned the attendance was down, but it's still an intimidating place to play. It's when it's got the fan base there. So that's a very good question. It's a little late in the game. I hope they can. Remember, 5 teams are gone. Grand Canyon's done some good work in the portal, as Wyoming. I think New Mexico should be contending for a conference title every year now. I really do. So I don't know. That's a good question. I would say it's getting a little late in the game, but I hope they can still get somebody on schedule that remember what Patino did a few years ago, St. John's, UCLA. He really beat that schedule up. So let's see what they can do.
Rick, I'm going to answer that question with Coach Olen's answer to Will Weber of the Santa Fe New Mexican when he was posed the same question.
Idea of it. And we talked in Indianapolis about the difficulty for teams at this level to schedule. But imagine it hasn't gotten any easier since March, since the last time we talked about it. How is the schedule progressing for you?
Yeah, that's something that we're spending a lot of time on. Because with the adjustment into the league, I think we lost 7 quad 1 and 2 opportunities out of the conference, and so we're probably not going to be able to replace 100% of those in the non-conference, but we are trying to replace as many as we possibly can. And so that's another aspect of the investment, right? Because in order to do that, we aren't going to be able to do that here. We aren't going to be able to play all those, quad 1 and quad 2 games at home. We'd like to get a few at home, certainly as many as we can. But it's going to require us to go on the road. It's going to require us to play neutral games, and there's a cost associated with those kind of things. So there's a lot of factors in the schedule, and it's something we're spending a lot of time on to try to both create a schedule that gives us a large opportunity. We want to bring teams into the pit that our fans are going to be excited to see us play. and we want to put ourselves in position to be successful. So, but everybody has those same, right? Everybody's kind of working with different motivations and how they schedule. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges in putting it together.
I thought that was a pretty thoughtful answer from Coach Olen on that question. There are a lot of challenges with filling a schedule now for UNM and really all these Pac-12 and Mountain West schools because they're all in the same boat. There's not a ton of quad one opportunities. Power 4 schools don't want to come play you, particularly at elevation. And you've just lost a lot of conference games that were quad 1, quad 2 opportunities like Coach Olen mentioned in his answer. So Rick, to your question, I mean, can they develop a non-conference schedule that will make them competitive for an at-large bid? 76-team bracket now, right? Am I missing that? 76 teams now. So maybe they do have a shot. I think they'd have to play well in conference, and who they could get. I like your talk about Boise State, Oregon State. Lobo fans would love to have the Pac-12 deflectors in the pit. They would love that. The ticket prices would go up. So hopefully we hear some good news about that. But let's talk now about the roster, Rick. You've covered this roster as well as anybody here during the transfer portal season. Just give us your thoughts, man. We know the big names. Obviously, Jake Hall's coming back, but kind of your big picture thoughts on how this roster's developed.
Yeah, I really like it with some of the pieces they're adding and some of the ones they're subtracting, right, and going out the door. I think when you lose, though, a Tomislav Bojan, who is an all-conference level player, and then JT Rock leaves a couple days after that, we see a glaring hole, at the post position or the big man position, whatever you want to call it. And of course, we get finally Finn Lastring, who is this big man from Germany. I believe he just turned 19 yesterday. So still young, developing, but he looks like a very different type of post player than a Tomislav Bojan. So that hole seems to get plugged, but I'm very excited about the 2 wing players they got in Hudson Mays from UC San Diego, who was a freshman last year, averaged 10 points, 5 rebounds. He's an inside the arc player, made about 30% of his, 33s he attempted last year. But a great defender, someone that's going to be able to lock down perimeter players and also rebound hard. And alongside him, there's going to be a young man from William and Mary, and I could be saying his name incorrectly. I haven't heard it said in real life yet, but Tundi Valberg Fasasi. He looks like a 6'7" to 6'8" stretch forward, shot 35% from 3. But unlike an Antonio Chol, he actually tries on defense and puts the ball on the deck and goes to the hoop at times. So I see this player from William and Mary as an enormous upgrade over Antonio Chol, and I expect Fasasi to start for me, probably at the 3-4, whatever you want to call it. So for me, Hudson Mays, Fasasi were the biggest grabs out of the true portal. When you're looking at the freshmen they got, of course, Dax Hall, Jake Hall's brother at the guard position. Hopefully he'll be able to contribute because I don't see a lot of other players on this roster that can touch the paint like a Tenet, and kick the ball out like they like to do in their offense and actually break down guys off the dribble. So I was hoping for maybe another type of creating type guard, and I kind of see that as maybe somewhere else they're lacking. But in terms of the wing players they got, the player from St. John's, Soljanovic, if he's healthy, he looks like he can put the ball in the bucket, along with the other young guy from Austria they got in Shook. But it looks like a lot of good pieces. It'll be interesting to see how the chemistry is with the existing players in Hall, and Tenet. But I'll throw it back at you, Nick. What holes, if any, do you see in this roster, and what was your favorite piece they've added in the offseason?
Holes for sure, Rick, I think is an inside presence. We always go to Steve Singletary, but he's got great comments. We don't have the money, but we need a true center that would draw double teams so we don't have to always rely on drive and kick. I think that's a good point. I asked Coach Olen about rim protection. This gets to your first question. What is their biggest need? I mean, true presence on offense and defense. Bojan was a beast on the boards, a beast. No one denies that. That's physicality. That's inside presence. JT Rock developed over the course of the year. They need serviceable big men. They don't have to be perfect. but they need to be serviceable, and fit his scheme. Here was Coach Olen on the question about hunting rim protection in the transfer portal with the remaining roster spots.
You know, if you look at last year's roster, one thing you guys didn't have a lot of was rim protection. I think you guys finished 259th in the country. And as a consequence of that, sometimes you had to protect the paint a little bit more. Is there a thought process on that with the 5 remaining roster spots that you guys have left, as that possibly being a need, more rim protection?
Yeah, it's certainly something that we'd like to have more of. But it's also not as simple as like, oh, we'll just go get some rim protection. You know, like there's a lot of factors in that. You know, college basketball recruiting has a financial component to it, and size, rim protection are some of the things that are at most premium in terms of the market. So, you know, it's easy to look at like our statistical model and say like, hey, this is a weakness, right? But it's not as simple to sort of fill that hole. And rim protection for the sake of rim protection, if they don't fit into other things and contribute to how we're operating, can be a misuse of resources, right? So like there's a lot of factors in those decisions, and we'd like to have the most complete team we possibly can. We also feel like there's other ways to win basketball games as well.
Dad, the question is posed to you. It's not just about rim protection, it's about inside presence, but Coach Olen touched on a lot of big things. I think the big thing, financial component. Big men cost the most on the transfer portal market. There was a rumor that JT Rock got $400,000. I mean, you know, with the money that UNM has left, which we don't know, I don't know if we'll ever know, but can they afford a big that can fit Olen's system and give them an inside presence?
He mentioned that. He said, you know, their big men are at a premium. They cost a little bit more. You mentioned JT Rock. I think he would have stayed, but he got $400,000, and who can blame him? And he did, you know, the other thing that Coach Olen said, I thought that was interesting to me. There's other ways to win basketball games, and he's right. But I think we both know, all of us know, you included, Rick, you need that one guy who's going to finish the defensive possession by grabbing that rebound. And Bullion, you had a strong guy, was a quick jumper, 23 years old, grown man strength, man, had played in a professional league. And he mentioned that league wasn't always, you know, the most competitive. He played against a lot of older men, he said, but that made him strong. There was times he'd rip through, go right to the hole. He used his quickness. And then you had JT Rock, who at the first of the season, I was looking at him in the practice that we saw early, son, and he didn't play on his toes. And Mike Roberts, oh my God, Mike Roberts, man, Rick, you mentioned that. Mike Roberts was running out there and just ripped him. And I like Coach Roberts a lot. I'm not laughing at JT Rock. That's the guy that's going to get in your face. And so he improved. You know, he wasn't a great shot blocker, but I thought as the season went on, he got better. Little jump hook over his, he started developing that, and he could stretch. He's 7'2", size helps. So I don't, what they have right now. Let's look at Grand Canyon. They got that 7-footer. What's his name?
F.A. Demerol.
And then they got Tyler Barron. Yeah. So he's 26, 27 years old, 7'1" or 6'11", been in the Navy. Those are grown men, man. They're going to get those rebounds. And I don't know what they have left or what's on their what they're targeting. But I still say you got to get somebody in there who's going to get me that rebound when we need a rebound. So that's a little bit of a concern. I'm not going to lie. Coach Olen made it sound like he doesn't know what he knows what they're targeting. I'm going to leave it to him and say he's got an idea better than we do. But he knows, and we know, that the roster right now that's constructed, Rick, you mentioned Hudson Mays. That kid has got an upside, man. I watch him. We have not even begun to see what that kid's going to be. So I'm excited about him and Stolanovich, or the guy from St. John's. But they need some inside presence. There's no doubt in my mind. They need a couple of bigs. So we'll see what happens.
Rick, I didn't get the chance to answer your second question, which was who's my favorite. And I think my dad just stole you, and my dad have both said great things about Hudson Mays. I don't know if we've talked a ton about Rytis Petraitis. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. The transfer from Cal who lit the Lobos up in February of 2024 when he hit that game winner at the top of the key and gave Air Force a 78-77 win over Rick Pitino's Lobos and ended UNM's hopes for an at-large bid that year. Rytis Petraitis then transferred to Cal, averaged 8.4 points per game, not last season, but the season before that, only played 7 games for Cal, 6 or 7 games this year. So excited to have him, man. I think that's a veteran presence. We'll see how he shakes out. But Rick, this comment might be for you. I don't want to butcher the name, but we appreciate the comment. Are there any names linked to New Mexico right now that you know of, Rick?
I'm not aware. I mean, in the portal, there was another foreign center from France. I'll have to look him up. But there was a high school recruit from Texas, a 6'7" forward named Trey Hall, who averaged about 12 points, 7 rebounds, was a state champion in Texas at one of the highest levels. Well, unfortunately, Texas Tech just noticed that kid as well. So he does have an offer from Texas Tech, I think SMU or one of the other Texas schools, and New Mexico. As far as the international guy, I think his name is Izan Lemieux, and he's a center from France. I think the chance of landing him at this point is probably pretty far off since they landed Finn Lastring. But those are the only 2 that I'm currently aware of. And just to comment on, what your dad is saying about rebounding and post presence as a whole for this team, I think what Coach Olen is really doing is preparing for this new look Mountain West, which is adding 2 teams that used to be in the Big West, right? With Hawaii and UC Davis, 2 schools he's very familiar with. He knows that they don't have big guys either. He played at UC San Diego with no real big guys. If you go and look back at those last few squads, there was not a lot of, traditional post players. So I think that's the way these rosters are going to look, and we have to get used to it. It'll be more of a team positional rebounding thing where everyone's counted on for rebounds.
Great point, both you guys on that. I agree with everything you guys said. Last thing I wanted to talk about, guys, and I think maybe we should get out of here. We're coming up on an hour. This is John Romero. Ryan Behrman pulled off an outstanding one today, locked up Texas Tech for 2027 football season. That will replace the Texas A&M game that fell by the wayside per A&M. Great job to our AD. That was from John Romero. Dad, your thoughts of playing Texas Tech football, Lobo football, and Texas Tech have some history. Your thoughts on the announcement of this game? I think it's a road game.
You know what? I remember when back in the day, we had a series with them every year, and they took it to us, man. They did. Nick, you were there when I think the Lobos last beat Texas Tech in 2002. You and I were at the stadium, a walk-off field goal, I believe, if you remember that, son.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I think it's great. I think Ryan Behrman did a great job with that. Of course, Texas Tech is a very good team, and it'll be great to see UNM compete against them.
Rick, I know you got thoughts on UNM football too, man, but start with this announcement of the Texas Tech game.
Yeah, really cool. I think it's a natural rival, right? They're regionally close, have had some competitive games in the past, probably. I think they might have played during the Loxley era, and it might have been a bloodbath, but every game was, so I would try not to remember that time. But I'm glad this is coming back. I think there's a rumor that New Mexico basketball might play an exhibition as well, so we'll see if that comes up. But I love playing Texas Tech. I got to attend basketball camp there when Bobby Knight was the coach, and that was electric.
Hey, man. Yeah, I know. I've heard some stories about Coach Damian Seguda and Coach Marcos Rivera at the Texas Tech camp. You'll have to tell me more. One more comment on the Texas Tech game. This comes from JRod1702. I wish the Tech game was this year. Who knows what 27 will be like, but I hate Tech with a passion. I love it. Love to hear that there's some heated rivalry with Texas Tech still going. Guys, anything else that you wanted to mention before we break off from the show?
One more comment from me, and it came from Steve Singletary. And, Steve is one of our great listeners, man. And I just want to tell everybody I will be hosting Unfiltered tomorrow on 6:10 a.m., 95.9 FM. Kenny Thomas is out tomorrow. And I got to tell you that anytime I'm on with Kenny, and Steve mentioned this, he always pumps up the Pit Press. What's going on with the Pit Press? What do you guys got going on over there? So I wanted to tell say this. I really thank Kenny for that. He helps us, promote our product every day that we're on. So 4 to 6, and if you get a chance to call in, 505-246-0610. You can also text at that number. We're going to have Will Weber on. He's going to talk about the situation from the Santa Fe, New Mexico Highlands. Also going to have Curtis V. Hill on from the Albuquerque Basketball Officials Association, talk about his referee camp, and we'll have some other guests and calls and talking about the NBA, NFL, baseball. We'll talk about that too. So please tune in tomorrow afternoon. Could use your calls and texts.
Right on. Yeah, I'll be tuning into that, Dad. I'm happy for you, man. That's an awesome opportunity. Rick, anything else, man?
No, just appreciate you guys for having me on. Keep up the great work, Nick. Super excited to hear more about that court case that you are involved with, and I look forward to having you on my podcast to give us some detail there. Keep doing your thing, guys, and thanks for having me on. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Absolutely. I'm going to end with a comment from Eric Moulton, the owner of the Pit Press. Good show, guys. Caught the last 20 minutes. I think there is more value on stretch fours compared to going true big man route. They're overvalued, according to Evan Maya. Great point by Eric. He's been sharing a lot of Evan Maya stuff with me lately. And no, I couldn't agree more with that. But guys, great show. Appreciate Rick, you joining us. Dad, as always love being on with you. For everybody tuning in, this has been the Pit Press Live. Have a good night.